Good morning, happy Thursday, or whatever day you're watching this back on the replay. Thank you for joining me. Great to have you here, and welcome to another video exploring cognitive biases. And some may argue that this one's not quite a cognitive bias, but I think it counts, and I'm sure you'll agree that it's an interesting subject and something well worth discussing. So let's explore the Google effect. So the Google effect has been a term for a little while now, and it's being researched and looked into still. But there's some interesting research around it. So what is the Google effect? We should probably start there, right? The Google effect, very simply, is the idea that as we come to rely on having Google in our pocket and instant access to all of the knowledge and information of the world almost in the palm of our hand, we actually are becoming less able, or certainly less willing, to retain and remember and hold on to that information. So, for example, studies showed that if you got a group of people together and you told one group of people that, well, you told them that you're going to tell them some stuff, they've got some information, and they're going to be tested on it. And one group, you tell them that they'll be able to look it up. They can research back. They can check it out on Google or whatever. And the other group couldn't. The group that knew that they could just look on Google, for example, they didn't remember half of the information. Actually, I say half. That's not the accurate figure. Basically, they were terrible at remembering and recalling the information that they had learned, suggesting that when we know that we've got a way of looking up that information in the future, we're less likely to retain the knowledge and the information that we're learning as we go along. And so there's been a lot of talk about the Google effect and this idea that we're becoming dumber as a society, as a species. And I mean, to jump ahead and kind of give you a spoiler of the outcome of the video as we look into this more, it's simply not true. So actually, when you look at it, IQ or intelligence quota, which is the most common method for assessing intelligence levels, they've actually had to correct and amend for that going along, because the way IQ works, 100 is average, regardless of age and time that you're living, etc. So they need to make adjustments to it. And on the whole, as a species, or certainly those that are being measured, we're becoming more intelligent and needing to make adjustments to that. And one of the key reasons why I think there's this disconnect and disparity that people see between becoming more stupid and not being able to remember stuff, people see the two as being very closely linked. And sure, there's definitely links, but they are not the same thing. Intelligence is not how good you are at remembering stuff. Intelligence is not about retaining knowledge or knowing lots of stuff. You could be amazing at a pub quiz just because you remember loads of random, useful or useless information. Intelligence is about your ability to connect those dots. It's the ability to utilize the information and the knowledge that you do have. So that person that knows all of the answers to the pub quiz may seem really clever, but if they were asked a question that they didn't know, their ability to answer that question based on making an educated guess from the information they do know, they're probably not going to do as well as someone who may not have quite as much knowledge or information, but they're able to piece that knowledge together better to come up with answers to problems that they weren't expecting or prepared for. And there's the difference between memory and intelligence, right? So does having Google in our pocket, available to us at all times, make us stupid? No, it doesn't. Does it make us worse at remembering? Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Especially given that I've explained already Studies show that if you know that you can look that information back up, you're far less likely to retain it. So the assumption from that is that we must be getting worse at remembering, right? Well, actually, that's not true either. Why? Because, okay, so let's understand a little bit about how memory works and what memory is. And actually, check out I did a video called Moody Memory, which covers a couple of different memory biases. You might find that interesting if you enjoy understanding memory, because it's a complicated thing. It's not as simple as you think. So for a start, there's two main different kinds of memory. You've got declarative and non-declarative memory, right? So non-declarative memory would be remembering skills, movements, like riding a bike, that kind of thing, right? We remember how to do that. That's not the same as declarative memory, remembering facts, like recalling a phone number. I mean, hey, there's a great example, isn't it? Phone numbers. When's the last time you needed to remember a phone number? Because it's just there in your phone book. And if you don't have your contact lists, you probably don't have your phone, you're less likely to need to make a call. I still remember my dad's mobile number and the home phone number, and I bet you watch. Let me know if you're watching in the comments. Do you remember the phone number, your home phone number from when you were growing up? And that might just go right over the head of younger generations where we just don't have home phones anymore, half of us. Anyway, yeah, declarative facts, remembering facts and figures like phone numbers, the biggest animal in the world, what your cousin's third favorite reptile was, whatever it might be. This is the kind of memory that's impacted by the Google effect. So are we getting worse at remembering facts and figures and information? Actually, no, we're not. Surprisingly enough, the science doesn't show that we're getting worse at remembering. We are absolutely choosing not to remember those facts and those figures themselves. But actually, our brain is still engaging. So the part of our brain that really deals with the collection, if you like, of declarative information and those facts and figures, is largely controlled by the hippocampus and the parahippocampal gyrus, so different parts of the brain that are like right here. Anyway, those parts of the brain kind of code those memories. And actually, when we look, it turns out through brain scans, etc., people are just as active, if not sometimes more active, when it comes to remembering things, or rather not remembering things that they'd Googled. What I'll explain is, I didn't explain that very well. So we need to understand what excuse me. We need to understand transactive memory. Okay, I've got a comment come in. Yes, I know my mum's mobile number because it's one of the ones I've dialed lots of times from a landline. She has had the same number forever. Exactly. When you have to remember it, or especially like dialing it on a landline is a great example because you've got that kinesthetic, that movement, sensational thing that helps you to recall it. Like, for example, your PIN number. You might not actually remember the numbers of your PIN number, more the pattern that you use. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. Maybe another video. But yes, so transactive memory. What we do is we don't, and this isn't new, okay? This isn't a Google thing. This is something that has been the case for a long, long time. It's just with Google, it becomes a bit more prevalent and certainly a lot more noticeable. So transactive memory is actually effectively about outsourcing your memory to other people or other things. We do this all the time without even thinking about it. For example, you're sat watching a film, you see an actor you see an actor that you recognize, and so you turn to your partner and say, "What else has she been in?" And the partner is the one that remembers all that stuff, for example. Or maybe you remember all of that stuff and your partner doesn't. If I want to remember, I don't know, if I'm not recalling some kind of formula or something, or some mechanical thing, I'll call my dad and ask him. He'll remember, right? Or we know that actually the best place that I can find that information is in that book that I've got on my bookshelf. So we'll go and we'll look at that book. Now, here's what we're getting potentially, arguably even better at doing, but certainly hasn't got any worse, is we're really good at remembering where to find the information. So if you ask someone who's, if you like, fallen prey to the Google effect, to recall that bit of information that they searched for or that they found out the other day, rather than the memory of the answer to the question coming forward, what happens instead is that the memory of where they found the information comes to mind, and they're better able to remember and identify where to find that information. This is a good thing. Evolutionarily, in the past, it's been really useful for us to know where to go to find the information that we need. And actually, in a lot of ways, it's hugely beneficial. So it was Einstein said, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the quote, but something around, I choose not to hold in my mind information that's readily available in books, or something like that. When you can take all of those thoughts out of your mind, that creates more space. So if you know where you can find that information, you've got an advantage there potentially. So we've had this transactive memory for a long time, and I mentioned finding the information in books. When the printing press first came about, philosophers were saying, oh no, it's terrible that we're writing things down. In fact, not the printing press, books before that, just written books, handwritten books. Philosophers said, oh, this is a terrible thing because our memories are going to be ruined by having all of this information written down in books. Interesting how people are saying, or some people are saying, a lot of similar things about Google and the internet now. Ultimately, these things are tools, and they're there at our disposal for us to choose how to use. Technology is no demon. It's how we use it. So, in essence, to summarize, the Google effect is that we don't need to remember information as much if we just remember where we can find it. That's been true for a long time. It's just more obvious and more visible when we're talking about staring at a mobile phone. Am I saying that it's okay, just rely completely on your phone and spend all day staring at it? No, that's probably not the right way to go. But this rather pervasive idea that the internet's making us dumb, certainly when you look at the internet, that's very easy to believe. But on average, and looking from a wider perspective, the evidence just isn't there to support that. Actually, as a society, we're getting more intelligent, not necessarily as individuals, but I think also there's a platform, a readily available platform for everyone now. Whereas it used to be generally the more intelligent people, for the most part, that would get a platform that would get seen and heard and be in the public eye. Not necessarily the more intelligent, but skilled at something in some way. And so now that anyone can pick up a mobile phone and suddenly be visible online to the whole world, we're going to see more extreme ends of the scale and everything in the middle in a way that we wouldn't necessarily have been readily available to us in the past. So are we getting dumber? Actually, no, we're not. But if you're concerned about this, one of the best things you can do to improve and make a difference to this is practice, mental practice. So when someone asks you a fact or a bit of information, when you look it up, if it's something you really want to remember, rather than looking it up and going, oh yeah, it's here on Google, just pretend to yourself for a moment that you're going to need to recall this information without the aid of Google. Bonus points if you physically write it down to really aid the memory. So look, absorb, write down. Because then you're having to remember it without Google, and you're more likely to recall that process of writing it down. So it's there in your memory for you to refer back to more easily than it would be if it was just on that Google screen. Depends how you use it. It makes access to learning things you're interested in so easy, especially with so many people sharing skills. Absolutely. I think the internet is an amazing thing. Of course, I'm using it right now, and hopefully this is valuable to you in some way. So yeah, top tips. First thing in the morning is probably one of the best times to make sure you're not playing on your phone or looking at your phone. and absorbing all of the information from the world before you've really had a chance to decide what your focus for the day is. Practice remembering things without Google. And next time someone asks you, oh, what's so-and-so? Take a moment, think, and see if you can recall that information by deliberately intending to think about the knowledge and the information rather than thinking about, oh yeah, where did I read that? Give it a go, see how it works for you. And let me know your thoughts on the video in the comments below. And if there's any other biases that you want me to talk about or any psychological things that interest you, let me know and I might cover them in a future video. Also, if you're enjoying this video, something you might really enjoy is a brand new series that I've just started with the one and only Paul Newton from Mental Theft. It's called Mind Matters. We did our first episode on Monday just gone, and we're going to be doing a new episode on the last Monday of every month. We've got 6 months worth of content planned. So if you want to know more or you want to check out those videos, just head to mindaffinity.co.uk/Mind Matters, and you'll be able to find out more. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Have an awesome day ahead and a great weekend. Not that I'm trying to do anything out of the corner of my eye here to hit my outro video. Bye!